Imagine you're walking through a park and you see a common dandelion. Now imagine that tomorrow, everyone in your town suddenly decides that this specific dandelion is worth more than a brand new Ferrari. People are selling their houses to buy one. Farmers are trading their entire herds of cows for a single yellow weed. Your neighbor, who used to be a sensible librarian, is now screaming in the streets because he just traded his life savings for a handful of dirt where a dandelion might grow next year. It sounds like a comedy movie, right? But 400 years ago, in the wealthiest country on earth, this actually happened. Only it wasn't dandelions, it was tulips. This is the story of the Dutch Tulip Mania, the world's first giant financial bubble, and the terrifying lesson it still teaches us about money today. To understand why people went crazy for a flower, you first have to understand who the Dutch were in the 1600s. At this time, the Netherlands was like the Silicon Valley of the world. They had the best ships, the best scientists, and they had just invented something called the stock market. They were incredibly, ridiculously rich. While the rest of Europe was struggling, the Dutch were sitting on piles of gold from trading spices across the ocean. When people have that much extra money, they start looking for ways to show it off. Today, billionaires buy yachts or underground bunkers. In 1630s Holland, you showed off by having a garden full of rare flowers, and the king of all flowers was the tulip. Tulips were new. They were exotic. They came from faraway lands, and they had colors that European flowers just didn't have. But there was one specific type of tulip that was the iPhone 15 Pro Max of the flower world. It was called the Semper Augustus. It had beautiful red and white stripes that looked like flames licking the petals. Here is the first twist. The thing that made these flowers so beautiful and expensive was actually a disease. The stripes weren't natural. They were caused by a mosaic virus that infected the bulb. This virus made the flower look stunning, but it also made the bulb weak and hard to grow. Because they were sick, these flowers were rare, and because they were rare, the rich people wanted them more than anything else. But then the madness moved from the rich people's gardens into the common person's pocketbook. Around 1634, something shifted. It wasn't just about owning a pretty flower anymore. It became about the price of the flower. People noticed that the price of tulip bulbs was going up every single month. A bulb you bought for 10 gold coins in May could be sold for 20 in June. Suddenly, people who didn't even like flowers started buying them. Why? Because they realized they could get rich without actually doing any work. This is the get-rich-quick trap. It's the same feeling people get today when they see a random digital coin or a tech stock skyrocketing. You don't buy it because you want to keep it. You buy it because you think someone else will pay you even more for it tomorrow. The Dutch even had a name for this. They called it Windhandel, the trade of wind, because most of the time the people weren't even trading real flowers. This is the second twist. You can't grow tulips all year round. They only bloom in the spring. If you wanted to buy a tulip in the middle of winter, there was nothing to see but a brown, lumpy bulb hidden under the frozen dirt. So the Dutch invented futures contracts. ELI 5? It's a pinky promise on a piece of paper. I give you $1,000 today, and you give me a piece of paper that says, I promise to give you one Semper Augustus bulb when it grows in May. Now, look at what happened. People weren't trading flowers anymore, they were trading pieces of paper. These papers could be sold 10 times in a single day. You could buy a flower in the morning, sell it for a profit at lunch, and the person who bought it from you could sell it again by dinner. None of these people had ever seen the actual flower. They were just trading wind. By 1636, the fever reached a breaking point. Tulips were now being traded in local bars and taverns. Regular people, chimney sweeps, farmers, sailors, and maids were selling everything they owned to get in on the action. At the height of the mania, a single bulb of a rare tulip was being traded for 4 fat oxen, 8 pigs, 12 sheep,
2 loads of wheat, 4 loads of rye, a silver drinking cup, a suit of clothes, and a complete bed. That is not a joke. That was the actual price for one single root. In today's money, some of these bulbs were worth over $1 million. People were trading their family farms for a piece of paper that eventually would die. Now, you might be wondering, were these people stupid? How could an entire country of smart business people be this dumb? Well, here is the third twist, and it's a dark one. While the Tulip Mania was happening, the Bubonic Plague was tearing through the Netherlands. People were dying everywhere. In some cities, 1 out of every 10 people died in a single year. When you live in a world where you might die next Tuesday from a mysterious black swelling in your neck, you stop caring about long-term safety. You become a gambler. If the world is ending, why not bet your house on a flower? Why not live like a king for a week? The plague created a YOLO economy. It made the entire population reckless. People weren't just greedy, they were desperate for a distraction from the smell of death in the streets. The market became a giant game of musical chairs. Everyone knew deep down that a flower wasn't worth a house, but everyone believed they could find someone stupider than them to buy it before the music stopped. Then came February 1637. The music didn't just stop, the chair was smashed into pieces. The fourth twist happened in a small, smoky tavern in the city of Haarlem. A group of traders gathered for a routine tulip auction. The auctioneer stood up and offered a batch of high-quality bulbs. He called out a price. Silence. Nobody bid. He lowered the price. Still silence. He lowered it again. The traders looked at their shoes. In that one moment of silence, the greater fool theory died. The realization hit the room like a lightning bolt. There is no one left to buy this from me. Panic is faster than greed. Within 24 hours, the news spread from Haarlem to Amsterdam to every corner of the country. The price of tulips didn't just go down, it disappeared. It was like a cliff. People who had paper wealth worth millions of dollars woke up to find they owned nothing but a pile of worthless, lumpy vegetables. Imagine you traded your family farm for a piece of paper. On Monday, that paper is worth a fortune. On Tuesday, you try to trade it back for your farm, and the farmer laughs in your face. He doesn't want your paper. He wants his cows back. But you already sold the cows to buy more paper. The entire Dutch economy ground to a halt. Thousands of people were suddenly in debt for money that didn't exist. The courts were flooded with lawsuits. People were screaming that a promise is a promise, while others were screaming that the promise was insane to begin with. But here is the final, fifth twist, the one that historians are still arguing about today. For hundreds of years, the story was that tulip mania destroyed the Dutch economy and left the country in ruins. But when we look closer at the actual records, something strange appears. The Dutch economy actually didn't collapse. The Netherlands stayed the richest country in the world a long time after the flowers failed. Why? Because the government and the big banks were smart. They realized that if they forced everyone to pay their tulip debts, the whole country would go bankrupt. So they basically hit the reset button. They told everyone to just cancel the contracts or pay a tiny 3% fee to walk away. They treated the whole thing like a giant drunken mistake that the country needed to sleep off. The ruin was mostly felt by the middle-class people who had gambled away their actual savings. The super-rich stayed rich, the poor stayed poor. It was the people in the middle, the ones who dreamed of jumping to the top, who got crushed. The tulip mania wasn't a total economic apocalypse, but it was a psychological one. It changed the way humans thought about value forever. It taught us that price and value are two completely different things. So, what is the lesson for us today? We look back at the Dutch and laugh. How could you pay a house for a flower, we ask. But then we look at the modern world. We look at digital drawings of monkeys selling for millions. We look at meme stocks that go up 1,000% because of a tweet. We look at real estate bubbles where houses double in price for no reason other than everyone says it will keep going up. The tulip mania proves that human beings are hardwired for bubbles. Our brains are designed to follow the crowd. When we see our neighbors getting rich, our FOMO, fear of missing out, overrides our logic. We stop looking at the object, the flower, the coin, the stock, and we start looking at the green line going up on the chart. The ghost of the Semper Augustus is still with us. It's in every get-rich-quick scheme and every market frenzy. It reminds us that whenever everyone is running in the same direction, yelling that this time is different, it's usually time to start walking the other way. Because at the end of the day, a tulip is just a flower, a digital coin is just code, and wind is just wind.